welcome to the 5th class in the Urine Cards class. And this month I'm going to be focusing on sympathy cards and just some of the hardest cards you ever have to make, the ones where you just don't know what to say on them. So I'm starting out with this stamp set from Amy Butler. This is, I think it's the Lotus Flower stamp set. And I'm actually going to be using the large outlined flower stamp. So I'm stamping it on some cream color cardstock with StazOn ink. And the reason I'm using StazOn is I'm going to be using a blender pen with some chalk ink to color in the image. And if you don't use a waterproof ink for this step, when you stamp it, the black ink will start to smudge and smear when you go over it with the blender pen. So if you're going to do some sort of coloring, or even with markers, sometimes the markers will smear it, you want to be using a waterproof ink. So I've got a blender pen, and I've just pressed the ink pad onto the top of an acrylic block to pull the ink on top, and then I'm just putting the pen into the ink so that it can transfer the color to the paper. And you'll notice that after I've added the ink to the pen, when I press it onto the paper, it's pretty dark, and then as I use it, it starts to fade out, and it gives you sort of a watercolor effect. I think it's really pretty, and I thought it would be a great accent to this really pretty flower stamp. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about, or a little bit of when I was coloring this in. And the color of ink that I'm using is Wisteria, and it's from Color Box Fluid Chalk ink. Here's some green. I'm not sure what color of green this is, but check the class PDF that's with this class over at twopiecindabucket.com. There's a downloadable PDF, and I'll have all the supplies listed within that PDF in case you were wondering a little, for a little more details on each product that I use. And you can go over sections you've already colored in if you want them a little bit darker, and that's what I did on those leaves. This little purple piece has a sentiment that I actually printed out on the computer. This is from the Sending Prayers digital kit. It's a brush, and I just used Photoshop and then printed it out on some cardstock. And this sentiment says, "Sending prayers your way." Next, I'm using this dot stamp from Art Warehouse with some of that same Wisteria Color Box ink. I'm just going to put some dots at the bottom of this 5x5 card. I'm using some Basil Craft cardstock for this, and I just cut it to 10x5 and then scored it in the middle or halfway across, and then folded it so it's 5x5 finished size. Here's some purple cardstock, and the idea behind this was I wanted to have kind of like a panel of color on the right side and then a panel on the left side as well, and I wanted to have it sort of look like it wrapped around the card. So they're the same height but different widths. Just tying some ribbon around after I punched the edge. And I'm adhering this to the card, and after I had the ribbon around it, I decided I wanted a little more space in between the two pieces of purple cardstock. So I adhered it, and now I'm just trimming off the end that hangs over. And the last part of this card is just to put the stamped element that I finished earlier onto the card. And then I'll be taking some white pen and drawing in some stitching lines. And this also helps create that effect that it's wrapped around the card, because that line, you can see that it continues. I'm using a quarter rounder punch. This is a Fisker Squeeze quarter rounder punch. These squeeze punches are really great if by chance you've tried the regular, the standard punches, and they might hurt your hand a little bit. These use different muscles in your hand, so it might be a bit easier. You might want to try those if you've had trouble with punches in the past. Just rounding these corners, and that finishes up the very first card. I'm going to be showing you all 3 cards in this video. So going on to the second card. The second card is a really, really simple card, and all I've done is taken a standard size card that usually is 5.5 by 4 1/4, and I've cut off the end a little bit so it's a little bit more narrow, or not quite as high, I guess you'd say. I'm using this stamp set from Pink Paisley and some raspberry ink. I'm just going to stamp this flower 3 times, and I noticed that probably because I'd never used this stamp before, that the ink sort of didn't apply evenly onto the paper, and that will happen a lot with new stamps, you may have noticed, but I didn't let it bother me because I sort of like the effect of when it's not completely even sometimes. It has more of a hand stamped look, so I didn't really bother restamping it at all. I'm using some chipboard letters from Basic Gray, and I'm just spelling out the word sorry, and then I have, you know, if you're, I'm assuming since you're at 2Ps or at YouTube watching this that you're a little bit internet savvy, so you might recognize the emoticon at the end with the frowny face, with the colon and then the parenthesis. Got a little strip of cardstock here, and I'm just applying some liquid glue. The glue that I use for little pieces like this is always Tombow Mono Multi Glue. It's a great glue because it's it can also be two-way glue. If you let it dry completely, it becomes removable, but if you apply it while it's wet and let it dry, it's permanent. I'm just trimming off that end. And that finishes up the second card. Super easy, super quick, especially compared to that first card, which was a little more time-consuming. And now we're on to the third card. The third card has quite a bit of drawing and white gel pen applied to it. But before we get to that, I'm going to start with this wood grain circle stamp from Hua Arts. And I'm using Color Box chalk ink in charcoal. And I'm just going to be applying that to the stamp pretty liberally. It's a pretty big stamp, so you want to get a lot on there. And then I'll apply it to the front of the card, a little bit to the right side and closer to the top than the bottom. And then I'm going to take a white gel pen and just draw some stitching around the outside of that circle. K & Company and Amy Butler came out with this great sheet of 12 by 12 that has, I don't even know how many butterflies on it. I'll have to update that in the PDF that you can download for the class. But it has these die cut and embossed butterflies that I think are really great. And I just applied a glue dot to the back of the butterfly and kind of fluffed up the wings and then applied it over the circle. And the card seemed a bit bare after that, so I decided that I would draw some lines. These are just some guidelines so that I could go over it with white pen in just a minute here. And there's a lot of white gel pen on this card, so I'm actually speeding it up and just skipping some parts so you don't have to watch all of it. But basically the 3 lines that I drew in, and then all around the outer edges except for in between the 3 lines. And the last part of this card is I wanted to put a custom sentiment on the front of the card. Sometimes you're just not sure what you want to say on your card, so it's really great to use your own handwriting and make it more personal. So I'm just writing in the phrase, just know that I'm there, and speeding it up so you don't have to watch it in real time here. Okay, and that finishes up the third card. And I'm just going to show you this third card, up close picture of it, and then I'll show you the 3 cards together. And thanks for watching. Please join us over at the message boards over at 2psinAbucket.com, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.